Proposition 3, asylum seekers should be held in offshore detention centres while their claims are being processed. So this has been a huge election issue, even the previous election. So where Scott Morrison was the immigration minister, this was a contentious issue. Since then, we've had a number of cases, a number of exposés of families being mistreated in offshore detention centres. And so this has been a big focus for the Labor Party to kind of hone in on and make some policy changes. So let's see what everyone feels about that. We'll start with Aditya this time.
Yes, this is a very interesting question for me. I would want to also listen to BD's human rights angle into this. If an asylum seeker, whoever is on the shore or offshore, let's say if there is an island where all these people are kept in a detention center, and if they've been given proper food, shelter, and accessibility to medical needs, I think the detention centers are okay, provided there are no human rights violations happening, because they're still getting all the basic needs and then rights are not being violated. Bringing them to offshore without their application being assessed would also possibly will bring some issues to the country as well, because you've not screened the person completely, his background, his intentions, is asylum really right or wrong. So I would say that as far as their rights have been protected, they've given basic needs of every human needs, and they've not treated any different until their assessment is done. I'm okay for them to have in a detention center. But I'm really looking forward for BG sir's input in this aspects.
Yep. So we'll go to Babu Gogineni for this one.
All right. I completely disagree with what Aditya said from a human rights perspective. You know, just that word detention center tells you why I'm against that. It could be a reception center. It could be where people are welcomed. Of all the countries in the world, for protection, for safety, for their own welfare, they came to you and they said, save me. An asylum is sought by a person who is desperately in need of help. So the welcome should be warm. Like they are making the people leaving Ukraine in countries like the UK, in Australia too. They are saying, I have a room for you in my house. Come, stay with me. Now, many of the people who are seeking asylum come from countries where there is an active conflict, there is violence, there is war. All they are seeking is a happier life, but as part of society. So if they're not well, they go to a hospital. If they have been criminals, they go to a detention center. But remember that unless proven guilty, you are always considered innocent. And that grand principle of law should be applied to someone who, of all the countries, chose you as the one to save you. Now, look at how the Rohingyas are treated in India today. Now, in Myanmar, Burma, the majoritarian leadership there, the army leaders, have been fighting and scaring and driving away the Rohingyas because they're Muslim. Some of them went to Bangladesh, some of them more went to Bangladesh, and some came to India. Look at how much damage has been done to their reputation. Look at how it has been used as a means of degrading and shaming them. But these are ordinary people saying, I just want to live a safe life. So I would say the risk of criminals coming and seeking asylum would be very minimal. And they should be integrated in society till a decision is made. And you can then swiftly remove them after the due process of law. The due process always involves an application for a revision of decision. So it's an appeal, administratively and judicially. I think those safeguards are human rights safeguards. And look, it's not like millions are coming to Australia. This is a continent the size of the United States of America. This is a continent which is mostly desert, of course, with some cities. This is a continent asking people to come and work in this country. Some 400 different jobs and job skills have been identified. 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 people may not be a damaging burden on the country. And Australia is part of the global economy, the global human rights order. And therefore, I think, firstly, it should not be a detention center. Whether it should be offshore or not is a different question. Look, Australia itself is offshore to the rest of the world. It's an island continent. People come here. But for practical reasons, if you want to send them to another island, I think that's okay, but not in a center.
It was offshore and it was also a detention center historically.
Well, it started that way, did it not, Australia? Australia was the detention continent 200 odd years ago. So, and is it right that some of these offshore detention centers are actually in another country, not in Australia?
Yes, that's correct. So
and now how very bad is that? That you don't even let them be processed in your own country, but you take them to another country. I mean, we've heard of Guantanamo Bay issues, and we know that a part of Cuba is where that is. Historically, that came to be rented by the Americans, and that's where they process people. That's where rendition flights take people to. So I feel very bad about how this is handled. Every asylum seeker should be dealt with, firstly, with a welcome, with the warmth and assurance of protection, and of a better life than the one they were fleeing. If they're young people, put them in university. Instead of anyway inviting people with skills, give them the skills. It takes 3 years to give them the skills and then put them through it. It's a civilizational duty, if you ask me. It can't be a destination for asylum tourism. I agree with that. So some of these things can be decided very quickly. It's possible. We had people, I was involved in this. A person went from Pakistan to New Zealand and was asking for protection from persecution because he was a humanist. And the New Zealand authorities rejected that. I went to New Zealand, I met with the person, I interviewed him, I verified that his was a genuine case. I wrote the case for his being granted asylum. It was processed, it went to the administrative tribunal in New Zealand, and that person's application, and not because I did something, because there was a lot of other people doing very solid work on this case. And the person who was on the administrative tribunal felt that it was important to recognize, first time in New Zealand, that humanism was considered a valid basis for seeking asylum. Previously, if you said that you were gay and your sexual autonomy was being destroyed, you were allowed. Previously, if you said you were a religious minority, that was taken on board. But they had rejected him because he was just a humanist. And we made them agree that being a humanist and being threatened and possibly getting the death penalty for it is a valid reason for a country to take that person in her embrace. I would think, I would advocate, I would suggest that a similar thing, and this actually something like a year now, during Corona time, that we have this person being given. I was to go to the hearing after preparing the casework, but because of Corona, I could not go. But the person got it. The person got it. He is happy, and now he is waiting for his family to join him. This is a very small cost. If somebody is cheating the system, it's a very small cost for the cause of human rights, human welfare. So I would say, let them come in, let them be part of society, where possible, train them and their children, educate them. And if they're found to be completely unfit, you can always send them. But where will you send them? If they are coming from a country where they are in danger, where would you send them? To Nauru or to New Caledonia? Where will you send them? It's a tough thing. And many people come from troubled countries, troubled societies, where the warring factions are supplied with arms produced by the rich countries. So I think the cost of looking after asylum seekers is much cheaper than the costs being inflicted on societies by countries which are supplying arms and encouraging war. Complex, but that's why I don't agree with what Auditya said from a human rights perspective.
Thank you for those insights, are very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make with regards to the fears that are kind of instilled in people with regards to the crime that they could bring into the country, and all the statistics are against such theories, but it is the popular opinion that people have. It's a popular concern that people have, and you've got religion plays a role in that as well. You've got Christian lobby groups pushing heavily to keep these detention centres as they are. And of course, like you say, the tag itself as a detention centre, you're treating them as criminals from day dot, you know. So they're a perfect safe haven for human rights violations, and this has been proven the world over. So absolutely, I would strongly disagree with the statement myself as well. So unless Sarath, did you have anything else to add to this point?
I think I'll just add one point here. As a general rule of thumb, the worst bureaucratic inefficiency and the worst kinds of corruption from within the bureaucracy is often seen in the way how people from non-citizens are treated in any country. That applies to any country, I think. And as a matter of caution, and as a matter of caution from a humanitarian standpoint, it's much better for asylum seekers and people who are coming in largely for asylum purposes to be part of the society, to be allowed to not suspended of their liberties or civil or human rights and civil liberties. So detention centers are, I think the slant calling it a detention center actually might even reflect the reality. So it's not good to have these things around. You look at something like the NRC implementation that's happening under Supreme Court guidance in Assam, which has been happening for some time in India, and you see cases where families, they are like detained for a long period of for like years together, and ending up being a mistaken identity or some sort of clerical errors or this is all bureaucratic inefficiency, corruption, and negligence of the highest order being inflicted simply because they can't ask, they don't have a recourse at all. So because these people are not considered citizens, so de facto they are not really given any opportunity to amend for themselves what the state has done to them. So in these kind of things where there is pretty much no way to hold the state accountable, and no one is there, with interest to do this as well. It is not good at all. As a matter of cautionary principle, these things should not exist at all, in my opinion. But I think they should be integrated into society as soon as possible. And I think as Babu Gogineni said, if they already have the case with them, they have the information, the state has it with it. they have the case, they have all the facts with them. So it's not really a difficult thing to find them. I mean, if they really want to, they really think that, this person or this family should not be part of the country. So
yeah, that's a great point as well. And leading on to what Babu Gogineni said in his example about the refugee in New Zealand, at least there was a process there. There was some kind of setup where you can appeal and you can get a result. I feel like in Australia that's missing, which is a huge problem in itself. And having these detention centres is not going to help that either. So I think we can all strongly disagree with this statement and move on to the next question.
So have I convinced Auditya about that?
100%. I had two minds on it.
Oh, thank you.
I was thinking that if the detention centers were removed completely, of course, you made much more sense with regards to the word detention. And my only other thing in my mind still unclear is what would be the influx of people if these things are processed onshore?
Well, I must say that Australia is a fantastically positive story for how successful it has been as a country for immigrants. Now, 2.5 crore, 25 million people in this country, a third of them are people who have been born outside this country, who have come here to settle and make this their home. I mean, there is very few countries as successful as Australia has been and is as a place for immigrants to come to, apart from the fantastic weather. Now, this is a reality of the country. Now, it is an attractive destination, even for those who want to fool the system. So one has to make it tighter. You can't get a meat sandwich into this country. I mean, it's that strict already. All you are saying now is treat the human seeking help as human. And also put some controls like the British do on those airlines which do not perform enough checks before they allow people to get on. I would say Australia should say people who want to apply for asylum should apply in the legation, in the embassy or the High Commission, depending on the country, where this person originates. So you're living in Nigeria and you're a humanist and you live in north of Nigeria, and Sokoto State, for example, wants to kill you because you are a humanist. You don't have to come to Australia to seek asylum, because Australia is already committed to upholding, very importantly, human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a signatory to many, many treaties that support human rights. One should be able to go to the High Commission, the embassy, and say, please help me. And that person could be processed there confidentially without anyone knowing. And the case could be rejected, turned down. I mean, if you see border control videos of the TV show, you know how many people are trying to cheat, to lie, to mislead. The country has to do what it has to do to maintain law and order and not to be cheated. But I think the country has the ability to find out when someone's playing the system. That's all I'd say, Aditya.
In short, I'll ask you one question over here, sir. Let's say this objection of these detention centers in terms of how they're managed, also with the name. If these detention centers are changed to, as you said, nice, warm, welcoming reception centers, in terms of name as well as how they operate, would it be okay to have these offshore centers still in Australia, but not on the mainland, but on the islands? Is that a good thing to have, or you would still think that it is to be processed on the mainland?
As I said, mainland is also offshore to the rest of the world. So I have no problem with it being on an island, but not on a prisoner's island. It should be where normal people who are not subject to immigration controls, are there, and these guests, these people who have asked for help, are able to mix freely with them. And in my reception center, I also want training. I also want orientation to people who want to come and settle in this country on the ideas of, I mean, imagine you're coming from Somalia. Don't expect them to be well versed in the norms of democracy or peaceful resolution of conflicts. When you come from a warlike situation, you are escaping it, but you carry a bit of the war with you. And to help them not be so traumatized, to help them with the PTSD of their situation, to help them learn the norms and the measures and the methods that are in place in the new home society, if they are accepted, should be done. Look, 1 million people, 10 lakh people from Syria were accepted by Germany into their country. But they didn't process them well. They welcomed them, and it's the warmest welcome anyone from that region ever got. They welcomed them, they got them in, and some of them, like Auditya, you are saying, committed serious, heinous crime against women. Now, I believe that's happened because they were not oriented correctly. They were not trained properly. They were not coached in what is expected of them. They fled a war situation. They landed there, and they continued to be violent. But out of 1 million people, out of 10 lakhs, how many are guilty of this? A handful. So I think Arjun already said, we need to look at the statistics. Immigrants don't really commit many crimes. All that they do is they will do illegal work, so to say. So they will go and they are undocumented workers. Well, when I say all that they do, I don't say that they should do it, but I'm saying they're not killing people. They're employed, they're exploited, not simply employed, they're exploited by employers because they're undocumented. They pay them less, and the employers can dodge the taxes that they have to pay. So there is a parallel underground economy. I can't say I'm not aware of it. It happens in all the countries. But like I said, there is a cost to this commitment to human rights of people and their welfare. And we just have to find a mechanism to overcome that. I am aware of many countries where petrol stations, restaurants keep employing students beyond the hours allowed to them, or they are employed at rates that are pathetically low compared to minimum wage. But government can handle that at the employer level rather than punishing somebody who's worked some extra 10 hours just to be able to eat.
You have given two beautiful words, sir, on this point. I highly regard you for that. I think you really explained humanism and your stand on humanism with these two exact words. One was reception center, another second one was guests. Beautiful words, very well put, sir. Thank you very much.
It's a great point, and yeah, I think that's a good segue. We just spoke about minimum wage, so this one is a question on how high should the minimum wage be.